What if the moment that should have destroyed a woman's life became the moment a man chose her forever? That was the question hanging in the cold Montana air the day Maggie Hail fell into the raging river, and the young rancher Eli Blackwood jumped in after her with no thought but saving her. The spring of 1878 arrived in Montana with more wind than warmth. The sun was higher in the sky, but its touch still felt like winter. Dusty Ford was a rough little town. A few cabins and businesses huddled together like survivors trying not to be swallowed by the plains. Eli Blackwood drove his wagon down the muddy street, his jaw set hard. At only 24, he carried the whole Blackwood ranch on his shoulders. His father was sick in bed, the water supply was shrinking, and Wade Crow, a greedy landowner, was quietly choking their ranch by blocking the river upstream. Eli climbed down in front of Miller's Mercantile. He was tall and strong, the kind of man shaped by hard work and harder winters. He bought salt, ammunition, and a little candy for his father. When he stepped outside, he noticed Crow's men watching him from the saloon porch. Crow tipped his hat with a smile that wasn't friendly at all. Eli ignored him. He had enough trouble already. Then the stagecoach rolled into town, its wheels muddy from the long road. A sharp crack echoed, followed by shouts. Eli's instinct made him turn. The rear wheel had snapped clean off, dropping the coach sideways. Passengers spilled out, tired and shaken. Among them was Maggie Hail. She stood a little apart, holding a small journal like it was the only steady thing in the world. Her dark dress was simple but fine, her bonnet pushed back just enough to show a pale, pretty face. Her eyes, gray like an early storm, studied the rough little town with quiet strength. She wasn't afraid, not exactly, but she was braced, ready for whatever came next. She had come from Boston after losing her parents and her old life. Her future here was uncertain, but it was hers. Dusty Ford had offered her a small job at the Mercantile and the hope of opening a school. It wasn't much, but it was all she needed to begin again. When Eli helped the driver fix the wheel, Maggie noticed him. He worked silently, with steady hands and calm eyes. He wasn't loud like the cowboys gathered around. He just did what needed doing. Their eyes met once as the coach was righted. It was only a second, but it was enough. She saw kindness there. He saw courage in her. Wade Crow watched from the saloon porch, his face twisting with a slow, dark smile. He elbowed one of his men. "Look there," he drawled. "Blackwood's boy is already dancing for the new girl." His men laughed, but Eli didn't hear. He climbed back into his wagon and followed the repaired stagecoach out of town. They didn't ride together, but they were headed the same way, toward the Cold Arrow River. The river was high and angry with spring melt. The only way across was an old wooden ferry pulled by a thick rope tied between two posts. Maggie boarded first with the stagecoach. Eli waited his turn on the bank. As the ferryman worked the pulley system, the platform slid into the current. Eli paused. Something was wrong. A section of the rope near the far bank looked frayed. It was darker, too wet, almost like cut. Before he could shout, the rope snapped with a sound like a gunshot. The ferry twisted, spun, then lurched sideways. The stagecoach slid toward the edge. Horses screamed. Passengers shouted. The ferryman fell. The water foamed around the wooden planks like a hungry mouth. Maggie lost her balance. Someone shoved past her in panic. Her hand slipped on the wet rail. The world tilted. She fell. The river swallowed her in one freezing swallow. The cold hit her like a hammer. Her heavy dress dragged her down. She fought upward once, gasped a breath, then vanished again under the churning green water. Eli didn't think. He kicked off his boots and dove. The water was ice. It grabbed him hard, dragging him under. But he came up fighting. His eyes scanned the river. He saw a flash of dark fabric far downstream. He swam toward it, arms burning. He dove beneath the surface and found her sinking, her dress pulling her down like chains. Her eyes were closed. Her body was limp. He wrapped an arm around her and kicked with everything he had. The river tried to steal them both, but he wouldn't let go. His lungs screamed. The cold bit into his bones. He broke the surface, dragging her with him, her head lolled against his shoulder. Her skin was as white as the river foam. "Stay with me," he growled, though she couldn't hear. He pushed toward the bank, fighting the current one brutal stroke at a time. Finally, his feet found the riverbed. He pulled her onto the muddy bank and fell to his knees beside her. She coughed weakly. Water trickled from her lips. She was alive, but barely. Then hail began to fall, sharp, stinging pellets that hit like stones. The sky darkened, the storm closing fast. She couldn't survive another minute in the cold. Eli scooped her into his arms. She weighed almost nothing. He held her tight against his chest and ran, boots sinking into the soft earth. A small black wood-lined cabin stood a short distance away, hidden in the trees. He pushed inside. The cabin was dark, freezing, empty. He laid her by the cold hearth. "Don't you fall asleep," he said softly, breathless. "I'm getting you warm." He worked quickly, striking a match, feeding the fire, forcing life into the room. When the flames rose, he turned back to her. She was trembling so hard her teeth chattered. "You need to get out of those wet clothes or the cold will take you," he said, his voice rough but gentle. Her fingers couldn't work the buttons. "Turn around," he said quietly. He undid her dress with careful hands, never looking where he shouldn't. He moved away the moment the last button came free. She wrapped herself in a thick wool blanket and his dry coat, drowning in both. Heat slowly returned to her cheeks. He handed her a cup of hot coffee, their fingers brushing. She looked at him with soft, grateful eyes, and for the first time, Eli Blackwood felt something strike his heart harder than the river ever could. What if the moment that saved her life also ruined her name? That was the danger Maggie Hail didn't see coming as she sat in Eli Blackwood's coat, warming by the fire in his lonely cabin. Outside, hail hammered the roof. Inside, the fire glowed warm, but the air between them grew heavy with a quiet, unspoken pull neither of them fully understood yet. Maggie sat wrapped in his wool blanket and coat, shivering less now. Her hair was damp around her face, her cheeks pink from the firelight. Eli sat on the other side of the hearth, giving her space even though every instinct in him told him to be closer. "You saved my life," she whispered. Eli shook his head. Anyone would have done it. But that wasn't true. She knew it. He knew it. He looked tired, wet hair dripping onto his collar, hands scraped from the riverbed. His dark eyes held something deeper than he allowed himself to show. She had spent her life around Boston gentlemen who wore fine clothes and finer manners. None of them could compare to the rancher sitting across from her now, humble and strong, with a heart big enough to face down an entire river for a woman he barely knew. Silence settled again, soft but tense. To break it, Maggie asked, "How is your father?" Eli's jaw tightened. He looked into the fire, as if searching for words there. "He's worse," he admitted. "The fever's deep in his lungs. Some days he doesn't know who I am." Maggie's heart squeezed. "I'm sorry." He nodded gratefully, then turned the question back to her. "And you? Why'd you come all the way out here alone?" Her throat tightened. The fire cracked. Outside, the wind roared. Inside, the truth she had kept inside her chest finally slipped out. "I was engaged," she said softly. His name was Arthur. Eli didn't move, but something in his eyes sharpened. "He was a respectable man," she continued. "Our families approved. Our future was planned for us. After my parents died and our money was gone, everyone said I should be grateful he still wanted me." She swallowed hard. "But that marriage would have made me a burden, a mouth to feed, a duty, not a partner. I refused to spend my life being someone's charity." She lifted her eyes to Eli's. "I came west to build a life where I belonged to myself." Quote, Eli stared at her like he was seeing her for the first time, not as a fine city woman, not as someone fragile, but as someone brave enough to walk away from everything she knew while the whole world whispered behind her back. "You're stronger than they'll ever understand," he said. Her breath caught. No one had ever said that to her. A cold gust hit the cabin wall. The wind howled. Snow began piling at the threshold. They were trapped together. Hours passed. The fire grew bigger. Their distance grew smaller. They spoke of their families, their fears, their hopes, and all the things they had tried to keep buried. And when exhaustion finally pulled at her limbs, Maggie leaned back against the wall, eyes heavy. "You should rest," Eli murmured. "I'm all right," she whispered, though she wasn't. She had never been more tired, more warm, or more vulnerable in her life. The fire hummed, the storm raged, and the only steady thing in the world was the man sitting beside her. The two of them drifted into a quiet, heavy silence, but far from the safety of the cabin. Trouble was stirring. The passengers from the ferry had made it back to town, each telling a more dramatic version of what happened. The truth twisted into lies. By the time the story reached the saloon, it had changed completely. A drunk cowboy laughed. Blackwood dragged her off to his cabin. What did they expect would happen? Storm or no storm? Someone else added, Eastern girl, alone with a rancher. Well, that says enough. Whispers spread like sparks in dry grass. By sundown, Maggie Hale's reputation was torn apart. Mrs. Gable, the owner of the boarding house, tightened her lips at the sight of Maggie's empty bed that night, choosing judgment over mercy. Wade Crow heard the rumors too. And the moment he heard Eli's name mentioned alongside Maggie's, something cold and dark lit in his eyes. "Well now," he said with an ugly grin, "look at that. Blackwood's boy has handed me a gift." In the cabin, Maggie knew none of this, but she felt something shift inside her, a fear she didn't know how to name yet. She stared at the fire, thinking of the town and the eyes that would watch her when she returned. "Eli," she said finally, her voice trembling, "what will people think when they learn?" He looked at her, truly looked. "They'll know the truth," he said. "I saved you, that's all." But they wouldn't. The frontier was harsh, and its gossip harsher. She felt a tear forming. "My name is all I have." Eli moved closer, his voice low and steady. "I won't let them hurt you." Her breath shook. She didn't know if he meant the town or Crow or her past. She only knew she believed him, not because he promised it, but because he was the kind of man who would throw himself into a river without hesitation, and the kind of man who just might throw himself against the world for her too. What if love wasn't found in a kiss or a promise, but in the moment a man risked his life to protect a woman's future? That was the truth Maggie finally saw on the day the valley erupted in danger, fear, and a fight that would change everything. The storm passed by morning, leaving a deep hush over the land. Eli saddled his horse, ready to take Maggie back to town. She wrapped his coat around her shoulders, already afraid of the looks she knew were waiting for her. When they reached Dusty Ford, her fears came true. Women paused mid-conversation, judging her in silence. Men stopped talking when she walked by. At the boarding house, Mrs. Gable gave Maggie a stiff, cold stare, as if she had done something unforgivable. Maggie swallowed the hurt and lifted her chin. Eli saw it all. The whispers, the stares, and it burned inside him. He wanted to shout the truth. He wanted to defend her, but his father was getting worse. His ranch was dying for lack of water, and Crow's men were everywhere. Trouble tightened around him like a rope. Days went by. Maggie buried herself in ledgers at the mercantile, doing her work with quiet dignity. Eli rode the ranch alone, fighting to save what little water he had left. Then one morning, he found the old diversion channel, his family's lifeline, deliberately destroyed. Rocks pulled out. Timbers pried loose. Water wasted into the dirt. He knew instantly who had done it. Wade Crow. Eli rebuilt the broken channel with his bare hands, fury in every breath, but the truth settled heavy on him. Crow wouldn't stop until the Blackwood Ranch was dust and bones. And Maggie was already suffering from the same man's cruelty. Later that week, Crow cornered her outside the mercantile. He took off his hat in a show of false charm. "Miss Hale, you've had a hard time settling in," he said softly. "I can fix that for you." Maggie stiffened. "I don't need your help." Crow's smile sharpened. "You need protection. I can offer you a job, respect, security. A woman alone out here shouldn't make enemies." Maggie's voice didn't shake. "I value my independence." Crow's eyes went cold. "Independence is fragile, Miss Hale. It can be taken." She walked away, but her hands trembled for a long time afterward. Tension grew across the valley. Water levels dropped. Cattle went thirsty. Wolves attacked calves. Crow grew bold. Then one night, Crow struck with the cruelty he had been saving. Eli was in town when a ranch hand stumbled into the blacksmith's shop, gasping for breath. "They took your pa!" the boy choked. "Crow's men! They've got him!" Eli's heart stopped. He didn't think. He didn't speak. He ran for his horse. He would have ridden straight to his death if Maggie hadn't grabbed his arm. "Eli, wait!" He turned, breath shaking. "They'll kill him," he said. "They'll kill you too," she answered. But her eyes, strong, fierce, did not waver. "You can't storm in alone. Let me help." And then she told him something that changed everything. Crow's quiet younger brother had come to her in secret. He had given her papers, proof of Crow's fraud, fake land deeds, bribes, stolen water claims, everything. Maggie held the truth in her hands. "We can stop him," she said. "Not with a gun, with this." Eli stared at her, and for the first time since his father got sick, hope flickered. Minutes later, Eli rode hard toward the dam where Crow was holding his father hostage. Maggie rode into Dusty Ford with the papers. The saloon was packed when she walked in. Crow was there, laughing, drinking, celebrating like he already owned the whole valley. Maggie stepped forward, calm as stone. "Mr. Crow," she said, "you talk about law. Let's talk about the truth." And she opened the ledger. In front of the entire town, she exposed him. Every lie, every theft, every bribe. Crow's grin died on his face. Women gasped. Men stood up. The room turned against him. But the damage was done. Crow wasn't a man who surrendered. He was a man who destroyed. While the town erupted in shock, he rode out with his armed men to finish the job he started, killing Jacob Blackwood and breaking Eli for good. At the dam, Crow held a pistol to the old man's head. Eli arrived alone, breathless, shaking with fear and rage. "Let him go," he shouted. "Not until you sign over your ranch," Crow sneered. Eli knew there would be no deal. Crow wanted everything: water, land, power, lives. So Eli did something Crow didn't expect. He used the land. He threw a stone at a loose pile of timbers above the river. The logs crashed into the water, sending a surge toward Crow and his men. The bank crumbled beneath them. One man fell into the river. Chaos erupted. Eli tackled Crow in the mud. They rolled, fists flying, water rushing past. And far upstream, Maggie worked with the townspeople, clearing a backup channel to release pressure on the failing dam. Her voice, usually soft, now carried like a command. "Clear it! Faster! We need that water moving!" Men who once doubted her now followed her lead. Back at the dam, Eli was losing strength. Crow raised his gun for the final shot. A single crack split the air. Crow's pistol flew from his hand. On the ridge stood Reverend Avery Pike, rifle smoking, fear burning away into courage. "It's over, Wade!" he shouted. "You're under arrest!" And then, with a groaning roar, part of the old dam gave way. But thanks to Maggie, the pressure was released. The valley wasn't flooded. Water rushed down the Blackwood Channel, saving the ranch. Crow was dragged away in irons. Eli held his father, tears running down his face. "You listened," Jacob whispered weakly. "You used your head and your heart." When Maggie reached them, exhausted and smeared with mud, Eli looked at her like she was the miracle he had waited for all his life. Days later, the town met and rewrote the valley's laws. They asked Maggie to be the keeper of their water charter, and to open the first real school. For the first time, she belonged. And Eli finally understood what he wanted. One evening, as the sun set over the fields the new water saved, he found her by the riverbank. He took a strip of leather and braided it slowly. "This is what we use out here instead of a ring," he said softly. "Something strong, something that lasts." He tied it gently around her wrist, her eyes filled with tears. She braided one for him, her hands shaking as she tied it to his arm. "Will you build a life with me?" he asked. "Will you marry me, Maggie?" "Yes," she whispered, "with all my heart." He kissed her, deep, certain, tender. The rancher's son, who had rescued the virgin from the river, had chosen her forever.